Michael Jordan said that how can he hit so many game-winning shots? He said, I already hit a game-winning shot, so all the rest of them are relatively the same or easy. And that's not the exact quote, but basically, we're all so scared because we're not doing anything anymore. We're watching things. And, immersive theater has this ability to connect with people in a completely different way. Theater is amazing, but interaction will always trump watching something. And that's generally kind of been my life model of why immersive theater I think is so important. I think improv a lot is, the study of the audience. And I think the final frontier of acting is understanding the audience fully and really working with, how they're sitting, what they're thinking, what their body language is, how receptive are they.
Welcome to the StageLink podcast. Today, we're talking with Scott Cramton. Scott's journey is nothing short of inspiring. Born with a cleft palate, Scott underwent 7 surgeries by 4th grade and overcame speech challenges through dedicated therapy. His love for the arts became his driving force, leading to the creation of American Immersion Theater, the premier provider of immersive entertainment experiences. With a passion for immersive and interactive entertainment, Scott has revolutionized the theater experience, creating engaging participatory performances that captivate audiences. American Immersion Theater, the umbrella company for several niche theater businesses, including the Murder Myster Co, has grown to offer a wide range of productions, from murder mystery dinners to elaborate interactive events. Scott's vision and creativity have positioned him as a leading immersive theater figure, consistently pushing traditional performance arts boundaries. Hello, Scott. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing?
Great. So happy to have you here and have a bit of a fun conversation today.
Yeah,
How are you?
I'm excited too. Yeah, this will be fun.
So let's start out with why theater? Why acting? What about it attracted you?
Again, I don't know if theater in itself is the big driving force for me. I always had the thing about theater. I watched a lot of theater, but I wasn't really able to be a part of a lot of theater. And that was kind of some of my driving force. I remember that I was I was really on kind of a math path in my, in my elementary school days. I remember sitting, in 4th grade with one of my speech therapists, and they're having one of those meetings where your parents are there and they act like you're not there. And they just talk to your parents and talk to you, but they don't reference you at all. I don't know if you guys are old enough to remember those meetings, but basically, she said something like, Scott's doing amazing. We never thought he could get this far. He could do almost anything he wants. And then she laughed and she's like, well, not like public speaking or acting or something. But everything else is on the table, which is amazing. And at that moment, I'm like, well, now I'm going to do something in public speaking or acting. So that was part of it. But, she was right. By the time I got to high school, I had spent, 15 years working on my, speech therapy, or at least 13 years. And I hadn't spent any time really working on acting. So I was sitting around. I somehow got into this draw theater program with a bunch of really talented kids. And they're doing the thing of what do you do, to get here, and what, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of their answers were like, I'm a guest model currently. My agent is this. I was on this TV show. I've done this much vocal work, 10 years of dance. And I was like, I learned to talk in a way that makes it sound like I'm kind of sounding like you guys. So they were right. I was really, really behind. The only reason I got into that theater program is because I tried so hard. I had a monologue, right? And you had to prepare for a monologue. And I did, for whatever reason, in 8th grade, did the sea captain thing. And I came in as a sea captain with like a hat and a a suit coat, and I had made my own pipe out of like a film roll and black tape and a pen, because obviously you can't bring that to school. And the teacher, the person that was, auditioning me, she asked me a bunch of times, she's like, so did you wear that most of the day? And I'm like, yeah, I had to wear most of it most of the day. And she realized I wanted it so bad. She told me, I let you in because you tried harder than anybody else, but you were awful. And so I realized I had a lot of work cut out for me. And, that work, and I think just not like consistently not being cast in things made me realize how much people in the audience are thinking about being on stage. And I think that was my first path of immersive. Also, that hopefully hits the record for longest winded answer to a single question you asked. So I did two things in that.
It makes me wonder, like, because it's definitely hard work, but you were determined. Was it the challenge or was it something specific?
Well, I mean, it's always a little bit of a challenge. I do really like, I like immersive a tremendous amount. And immersive theater does share the same word with theater, and theater is great, but they're very, very different. You know, there's a difference between watching the Super Bowl and playing in the Super Bowl. And I think that in many ways can be the difference between like immersive theater and traditional theater. Again, I love traditional theater. I go see all the things I can on Broadway, everything like that. I go to see a tremendous amount. But the value of watching things has never been lower because you have the world's, entertainment right here in your pocket, right? So
Right.
because of that, people have started watching things more and doing things thus less. Also, we work more, so we also have less hours. So, with that in mind, I guess it's kind of the feeling of being left out a lot. That was a large portion of the driving factor. Certainly some of people telling me there's no way I could do this. There's no way I could put this together. So that absolutely has a factor in it too. So I mean, I love it. And yes, spite can be a small motivator as well. So
Fair, totally fair. And you found your way through immersive theater, and I mean, I'm sure those didn't just. It's like, was it like a conversation with yourself on how can I make it work? How can I get others involved? Was it a matter of caring for others, or it was really like, how can I make this work for myself?
So I saw the show called The Boy from Oz when Hugh Jackman was in it. And, I was in like either high school or like just starting college. And we were like, oh my God. And it's like me and a bunch of my friends, we went during WrestleMania weekend. So these are all wrestling guys. And we're like, Wolverine's going to be in a musical. Schnickety, schnickety. We're so excited, And again, nobody had any idea Hugh Jackman at the time. I mean, we had no idea Hugh Jackman at the time was like, a Broadway maven and would do it. But this is one of his first major shows, right? So we're watching it, and there's like a billion songs in A Boy from Oz, like a billion. There's all this different stuff. And we're watching it, and we, no disrespect to people like Boys from Oz, but we hated it. Partly because we went in thinking he was going to fight people. Unfair comparison on our part, but we thought he was like going to be like a young wizard from Oz or something like that, shinnicking people with his claws or something cool. So there was a lot of there wasn't, the internet wasn't popular, so we didn't really get to look things up. And anyway, so we're watching the first act, and then it was Broadway Cares, right? So Hugh Jackman comes out, and he does about 15 minutes of improv directly with the crowd. For Broadway Cares, he's auctioning off his shirt, he's auctioning off his gloves, basically his pants, anything he can auction off on stage, and everybody's just riveted, right? Every single person, like nobody leaves. It's intermission, 0 people leave. Nobody's getting out of their seat because Hugh Jackman's directly talking to them. He's calling people out from the, the top, the balcony, the front, everywhere, right? And then the show starts again, like kind of right after. And the second act two starts, 50% of the audience gets up out of their seats and immediately goes to the bathroom or tries to get something to drink or whatever. And I realized that, at that moment, I realized that what everybody truly wanted is Hugh Jackman to interact with them. A Boy from Oz is great, and I'm not trying to take anything away from that. But Hugh Jackman interacting with them trumped Hugh Jackman performing for them. And I've realized that, theater is amazing, but interaction will always trump watching something. And that's generally kind of been my life model of why immersive theater I think is so important and why it is. And beyond anything, we're kind of a nation right now of voyeurs, which is not how America originally was. America was like the country that gets it done, and now we're very much the country that watches other people get it done. And my hope is that our company motto is saying that we empower people to participate really allows people to wake up and say, wow, I can be anything. I can act. I can get applause from the audience. I don't have to just be somebody who's watching something. It's one of those things where I think immersive theater truly gets people completely out of their general comfort zone and allows them to explore something that they never really thought they might do. That's why I love it so much.
So let's speak a little bit more general, because I feel like immersive can be everything and anything. So
yeah, we've been working on that a little bit, trying to figure out. Nowadays, it's everything, right? Yeah.
So how do you guys go about it? What's
Okay.
your goal, or what do you call immersive, and how are you trying to approach your audience?
Absolutely. So there's a lot of different forms of immersive theater that we've been working on. Probably the most common form of immersive theater is either voyeuristic immersive, which is kind of like Sleep No More would be the champion of that. It's awesome. I love Sleep No More. But, they tell you to put on a mask, don't talk, and you kind of walk around as a ghost in this story. It's very cool. The other kind is interactivity with your phone. So like selfie museums, that kind of stuff. But then there's true form immersive, and we run true form immersive, which means that essentially you as an audience member do control some of the story. Now, I think a lot of people here know that I run 4 or 5 different major companies that all focus on immersive. But to explain what the Murder Mystery Company is for immersive, audience members actually play suspects, and not like they kind of play suspects. They often have as much impact on the story as the actual professional actors. These are people that, these people truly are going to be part of the experience. They are questioned in final sentencing time. They actually get up during investigation time, and people come to them and they ask, like random audience members come to other audience members. They're playing suspects, and they will literally be asking questions, bribing them, and they get to really play this character. Part of the way we're able to do that is we give them broad strokes ideas, as opposed to giving them stuff like, say this line then, or something of that nature. Most of it is just like, these 3 or 4 things. This is a bit about your character. And we feel like anybody can kind of play that or do that. So for us, if you come to one of our shows, everything's on the table. Now, if you're super a wallflower, we study so much body language. We do so much body language training. We're not here to conquer anybody's stage fright. We don't get everybody up there and sing or something like that. But what we do is we allow you to either play in the anonymity of a table team where you're going to get to be an actual detective, or you might be a suspect, or you might be the killer, or the detective might handcuff you to the table. But the goal is you're going to leave with the story of something that directly happened to you. And that's our goal. Something that was an interactive moment directly with you, whether it was a very small thing just kind of at your table or a bigger thing in front of a lot of people, you will leave with something that happened to you. And I think that's what we really, in true form immersive, you have to say what interaction happened directly to me. Whereas voyeuristic, you can see I was able to do this, touch this, taste this, but nothing technically happened to you, if that makes sense.
Does any of this come from improv theory and technique, and how does that relate to that?
I think improv a lot is, the study of the audience. And I think the final frontier of acting is understanding the audience fully and really working with, how they're sitting, what they're thinking, what their body language is, how receptive are they. We do a lot of body mirroring. Yeah, of course we do a lot of improv. I think the big difference between traditional improv and true form immersive improv would be in traditional improv, you're hoping the audience will kind of set you up for a fun scene or a fun thing that will allow you to do a punchline. In immersive improv, you're hoping to set the audience up with a fun thing that will allow them to do the punchline. I think that's the core differential in those two things. But yes, obviously improv is probably more important than a lot of different things you can do if you're going into immersive theater, because you are talking to the audience. I do think the big thing that gets overblown about talking to the audience is everybody's like, oh, they could say anything. But if you do enough of it, you realize that if you say certain things, the audience, because we all have this certain amount of schematic information, they're going to say probably one of two or three different things. And if you don't believe me, just, if you're at home right now or you're in your car, think about this. Do you look like somebody and you've been to a club and people keep telling you that? Does your name sound a certain way? Have you ever been a cashier and there's no price on something? The audience doesn't say like anything. They're like, oh, is it free? It must be free. There's 3 or 4 things they say. And I think knowing that and understanding that is the kind of miracle of the next step of immersive theater, of true form immersive theater, is understanding what the audience will probably say so that you can guide them in a way without actually guiding them.
That's interesting. It's very heavy on psychology and body language. And
yeah. I've done about 3 or 4 years of 3.5 years of study with, body language, and watch dang near everything on the internet about body language. I think it's one of the most important things, understanding the audience and what they want.
Right. And do you think this will maybe give place to new business models and new ways of, like, there's a lot of people that say that the arts are struggling, let's say, and there's no, I mean, there's shows that are still sold out, and there's shows where there's nothing. But the bottom line is that it's an industry that's struggling. And by understanding the audience and the audience needs, do you think that this would reframe some of the business models or the ways we approach the audience to be able to come closer to them and cater to their needs?
Absolutely. I mean, yes, in my opinion, theater absolutely needs to evolve into this. I want to address the first thing: theater struggling or art struggling. So 2023 was the largest amount of ticket sales in the history of America. So people are going out and doing things. I know that there's been some things like, oh no, J-Lo's concert sold out. Well, because people just didn't want to see J-Lo that much. But overall, no, I think that older acts that people have seen maybe aren't doing as well, but ticket sales are going gangbusters, especially for alternative things. Wrestling, like WWE wrestling, never been hotter. Like this is an apex for a tremendous amount of different alt form entertainments, and Broadway's doing pretty well too. But yes, I mean, just take a look around the world, right? So in America, we have some great things. We have Meow Wolf crushing it, crushing the game, Meow Wolf, right? Then we have, Sleep No More, which is closing. But we have, 4 or 5 different things. And then we have a ton of indie people, right? Like great people that are doing just amazing things like, 3M and just different things like that. But in London, there is more immersive styled theater now than theater. In Tokyo, I don't know if you guys have heard of Immersive Fort Tokyo, but they just dropped, what I don't know the numbers because it's hard to get out, but it appears when I walk through it that they dropped at least 500 million on this. This is an insane venture where they have an entire immersive theme park. Jubentia in China is immersive, and it's the number 3 form of entertainment, not theatrical entertainment, all forms of entertainment. So it's movies, then it is sports of any kind, playing or watching in China, and then it's Jubentia, which is long form immersive games. It translates loosely to murder scripts where people will play in sixes, and they play for between 6 hours, 4 hours. A lot of them play all day with strangers, and it's allowing this next generation to connect. And I think that's what people need. They need to connect. They need to actually be part of something. They need to step outside and do something. That's one thing that, releases anxiety. That's one thing that can actually work, is proving that you can do it. Michael Jordan said that, how can he hit so many game-winning shots? He said, I already hit a game-winning shot, so all the rest of them are relatively the same or easy. And that's not the exact quote, but basically, we're all so scared because we're not doing anything anymore. We're watching things. And, immersive theater has this ability to connect with people in a completely different way, and for you to leave with something that's truly about you. And yes, we absolutely need more of that. Yes, it absolutely resonates. And I mean, we're opening in Times Square. We were in Shark Tank. So yeah, it's absolutely a form of theater that works. And it's going to, I don't know why America's so behind in it comparative to London, where almost every show is immersive now.
And now, a note from our sponsor. The StageLink podcast is proud to be sponsored by ClearCom. ClearCom is the leader in voice communications for theater and the performing arts. Call your cues with the simplicity and elegance of ClearCom Intercom solutions. You can find them at clearcom.com. Go check them out. Well, it's and another point I wanted to touch on that you kind of addressed it is that of course, as an American, you speak to your point of view and the culture you work on and you're familiar with, but also it's what you're proposing is very heavy on language, but at the same time, it's a culture, like culture shapes it. But stop me if I'm wrong.
No.
But
Yeah.
culture shapes it, so it's not that dependent on language, and then it can be shaped to any culture, and it's addressing a very basic human need, which is what you mentioned about connecting.
Absolutely.
And
every language has? Cell phones. No matter what country you're in, for the most part, they have this incredible distraction, this social media problem. They're beginning to ban social media because they're realizing how terrible it is for people and what kind of negative consequences it can give to children. We could be talking in 10 years, and it could, like, us being on social media as kids is probably going to be the same look as when our parents used to smoke to clear their lungs. It's going to be one of those things, and where we look at it in retrospect, we're like, oh my gosh, why were we doing that? It's obviously so bad for you. And I do think that is something that is going to be happening. I think that's an awakening that people are going to have. But people have to have experiences that are their own. It's crazy to me that people talk like they know the Kardashians or they know people on Love Island, and they talk and engage and say, like, did you see what Heidi did or whatever? And that's that's insane, and it's kind of sad, to be honest, that we talk like we know these people that aren't our friends, that we've never met, that frankly most of the time aren't always great people and wouldn't necessarily hang out with you either. So yes, and frankly, America is probably the least in touch with immersive theater of every major company, every major country that's really heavily focused on theater. Again, what they are doing in London right now, building the Batman Asylum, they're building Arkham Asylum. I saw Rumble in the Jungle. If you've never heard of Rumble in the Jungle, you have to look it up. They recreated the fight between George Foreman and Muhammad Ali in Zaire, Africa. And they did it by building Zaire, Africa. And you walk through it. And it's completely immersive. Like Muhammad Ali's walking around, George Foreman's walking around. They're doing all the beats of this historic fight. And then it ends with legitimately them doing this kind of choreographed fight in the ring that was beautifully done. And so it ended with a little bit of traditional, but I bought the VIP package there, and I was in Muhammad Ali's dressing room. They like rebuilt Muhammad Ali's dressing room, and he's pumping all of us up. And we went out with him as part of his entourage to a bunch of crowd, a whole bunch, like 1,000 people or something like that in that area. That is magic. Like, again, I'm not taking anything away from theater. I love theater. It's so great. And I do think theater is much better to watch than the Kardashians or anything like that. But I have never been to a theatrical show that's so good, no matter how much I love it, that made me feel the same way it was to walk out with, fake Muhammad Ali to 1,000 people in the crowd cheering and chanting Ali. That was awesome. And because it's an experience, it's a thing you remember. You remember the things that happen to you. Can I go in a quick thing that I say to all of my all of the people I train, teach, and stuff about immersive? Give you a scope. So let's just pretend for just a moment that you and me create the world's best play. Okay. Everybody says it's the world's best play. It's truly the world's best play. Like Shakespeare comes back from his grave and he's like, that one's better than anything I've ever done. Goes back to his grave. Everybody agrees. Everybody agrees to this, right? So let's just take this couple who saves up really hard and flies to New York, comes to our show, sees it. They're moved. They laugh. They cry. It truly is the world's best play, right? And this older couple, 60 something, 65, they worked really hard to save. This is a big trip for them. They get to go to New York once every 10 years. They paid for the tickets, and they loved it. It was the best play they've ever seen in their entire life. And fast forward, they come back to their hotel. They're talking about the play. They're about to go to bed, and just before they go to bed, the husband turns to the wife and he says, "So what do you want to watch tonight before we go to bed?" And that is a true fact. If we produced the best play in the world, it wouldn't even be the last thing they watched that day, because people are still going to turn on the TV after. So, of course, the value of watching things is lower. It just is, because it's nonstop watching things. So inversely, the value of being part of something must be higher. It must be, right? And that's why immersive theater is so important right
now. Do you think someone that walks in the room and doesn't speak the same language, whether it's verbally or it's like, let's say, someone that's more of an introvert, do you think the experience is still something that they're going to take away something with them?
It depends on what kind of immersive theater. In truth, the Murder Mystery Company shows are not great for that. Our Princess Party company, fantastic for that, no big deal. I run a company called Camp Dragon Online, which you guys should check out if you play D&D, Camp Dragon Online. And that is another language heavy one. Our version of immersive, I think, is very language heavy. So yes, it could be translated to any language. It's not language specific, meaning like you could do it in any, but most full form immersive is. If you're looking for immersive, but you're not really connected to this particular language and there's nothing particularly for you in your language, then I would recommend more of a voyeuristic immersive, because Meow Wolf or Sleep No More, you can get a lot out of those without really speaking the language. And I think that for that, but for ours, in honesty, they're trying to solve a murder in English. I remember I do have a story of a show, because we do, last year we did 8,000 individual performances, right? And sometimes people hire us for a lot of private events. About 12 years ago or so, I did a show, and I'm in Michigan doing the show. It seems like just a normal show, but people are not reacting. And I talked to the clients and I'm like, I mean, really not reacting, like in a way that I've almost never seen. And the client tells me, oh, yes, there's 30 people there. They're like 28 of the people only speak Swedish, no English. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, well, do the other two people want to help translate? And the client said no. So I'm like, okay. So in that day, we did a lot of physical comedy that they seemed to somehow enjoy, but nobody figured out who the murderer was. And if they did, I also don't read Swedish. So I don't know if they did, because they wrote it in Swedish. So yes, language barriers sometimes do hurt connections, I suppose.
But you did hit a good point, that there's a little bit of immersive theater in different shapes or forms for everyone.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's different forms of immersive theater, right? And, there's immersive Van Gogh, which is more of an art exhibit with projectors. We're still trying to figure out what's the best term for immersive Van Gogh. But there's always something for people, whether it's, the selfie museums. But there's stuff to do that is alternatives in most countries. But, things that are heavily interactive with you as a person, bases in the form of communication, how you communicate. And we communicate in a certain language. There's nothing wrong with anybody who communicates in a different one, but I'd recommend finding for our form, I'd recommend finding the version that's in your language best. And, hopefully we'll move to different countries more and do different languages. We've certainly done a few Spanish ones, and we've hired more than our fair share of professional translators to make it all work. But yeah, if you're doing a murder mystery, it's hard. I I actually was just at the Immersive Fort Tokyo, and they have a Sherlock Holmes experience in Japanese, but they have an ability to live translate some of it. So I was not remotely close to solving that murder, because I only understood 50% of what they said. But it was still impressive, and I was still interested. But I do feel like I lost some stuff when the translator didn't work.
Well, can you tell us more then about your Times Square opening?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're very excited. We're opening at Carmine's, right across from Harry Potter. So it truly is like in Times Square, next to Raising Cane's on like 44th Street. It could be wrong. And it's going to be incredible. So we're really opening officially after Labor Day. This is our first Times Square opening. This is our 23rd public show location. But this is Times Square, and it's a very permanent thing. 6 shows a week. It's going to be amazing. It's all set in a speakeasy in the 1920s. There's going to be a police raid. So you're going to have to flip the room. There's a lounge singer, piano player. all the bells and whistles, along with being the most immersive show that has ever touched Times Square. I don't know if there is a single true form immersive that has ever actually made it this close to the theater district. There's been great immersive shows in New York, don't get me wrong, but this is like, you're going to leave with like a true story of something that happened to you. And best of all, our shows are all fair play. We're the only company that does fair play murder mysteries, which means the ending is fixed. And you can solve the crime. We don't change the ending. It's not willy-nilly. It's a real game. You can actually solve the crime. You can actually put your detective hat on and you can actually win. You can figure out the motive and opportunity. Only one person in that room could have done it. And it could have been you. That's one of the most interesting things about it. Nobody knows who the true killer is, even the true killer. So it's a very, very unique game combined with entertainment and immersive. And, we're going to be open for a long time. So if you're in New York, come on down. You can do it. We have 2 shows on Friday and 2 shows on Saturday. So you can pre-Broadway it. We get you out before 6:30 with a full 3-course meal from Carmine. So yeah, that's me plugging my show. Look at that.
And just for everyone that's not American, Labor Day is the first
Oh
Monday
yeah,
for every
beginning of
leave.
September. Yes, I'm so sorry for all you amazing people who might be traveling to New York or anywhere. We are in nearly any city you would come to in America, any major city. If it's a tourist city, we are there. Whether it's Nashville or LA, Seattle or Orlando, we have a show anywhere you can think of. Unless you're big on visiting Idaho, then you'll need to drive. So,
What would you say is your favorite thing about your job?
oh man, I love what I do, and I highly recommend everybody just doing their best to pursue their dreams. I have been very, very lucky to get this, but I love writing mysteries. But I think when it really comes down to it, it's the moments that really affect people. I always remember this older woman. We were doing a show in New York, not Times Square, but a show in New York. And this woman, I guess, had turned 60. And she was like kind of crying after the show. And we had made her Scarlet LaRue, which was kind of like a femme fatale. So like people were hooting and hollering for her. She was a famous movie star, kind of like a Marilyn iconic character, right? And, this is just some lady in the audience, though. And she came up to me and she actually hugged me and she's like, "Thank you." When I turned 60, I thought it was kind of over for me and it was time to just, start, just letting life pass me by in the porch. And now I feel like I could do anything. And those kind of moments are what I really live for. The idea that this might awaken somebody somehow, you know. One company we have is called Famous for a Day. And Famous for a Day allows you to feel like you're a Kardashian for a certain length of time. So you might book it for like your friend who's getting married or something like that. She comes out of the bar and we'll surround her with paparazzi and fake reporters, maybe even a fake bodyguard, right? And people in the crowd will run up to this person because they assume she's famous, right? Your friend's famous, and take pictures with her and this kind of stuff. And the reason I started that company and the reason I do that is because it made me so discouraged that people really feel like they could never be a Kardashian. Like they could never be that kind of person and they could never taste that. So I thought everybody should be allowed to if they want to. So that's why we came up with Famous for a Day. And then people very quickly also realized that this is a fun experience for like an hour, maybe 2. But the big thing that I love so much is when people get to experience something they've never thought they could and learn something about themselves.
Guess that's what art's all about.
Yeah, in many ways.
So if you could change something about your job or the industry, what would you change?
About the industry right now, in America, I'd like them to believe that there is you don't have to just keep remaking a movie into a musical, and that's the only way to make things successful, that we could really engage with people. I wish the industry was more into that idea, like they are in China, Japan, and London and England. But from that perspective, from the movie perspective, I wish they'd stop making $200 million movies that there's no way they can make the money back, and then claiming that the film industry is dying because they're just making bad choices. But yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of regrets or changes or anything like that. I don't think in that way. I'm excited that, the great thing about nobody else doing it is it leaves me room to do it. So I'm excited about that. I don't have many changes or regrets. I love my job. I don't, okay. All right. I do have one. I think that people are a little scared right now to, touch each other appropriately, like even put a hand on a shoulder, or sometimes even just shake hands a little bit. And it wasn't quite like that pre-COVID. So I do wish that. And I went to this. I wish America wasn't quite so lawsuit happy, because in other countries they do some amazing things in immersive that we just can't do. Like I was in Tokyo recently, and I went to the sumo dinner theater immersive experience. And do you know what you get to do there? Wrestle a professional sumo wrestler. Like for real. Like I went in a real ring with a sumo wrestler. And do you know how many waivers I signed? None. No waivers. 22 different people chose to do that. And he threw some of them out of the ring. And they fell out of the ring, like they were thrown out of the ring, like into, bleachers, and they were hurt. And people just got up and they're like, well, I chose to do this and I had a good time. And they walked away. Because in Japan, you can't sue anybody for that. If you choose to do something, you can't later be like, well, what, I didn't know. And I do love that. So yes, if I was to change one thing, I would make it so if you say you want to do something, and you do it, you can't sue somebody for the thing you said you wanted to do. If you get in the ring with a sumo wrestler and they tell you he's going to treat you like you're an opponent, and you don't win, and he does exactly what he's supposed to do, you can't sue for that. So yes, I would love that. And that sumo thing was so dope. I would do it 10 times. The guy was smaller than me physically and did not look like he was in good shape, and was the strongest man I've ever touched in my life. Like unbelievably strong. Like I couldn't budge him an inch. Like I ran at him and he did not move 1 inch. Unbelievable experience. Definitely go see that.
I love it. Oh yeah, I'm looking forward whenever I'm in Asia. All right, Scott. Thank you so much. This was
Thank you.
very, very enlightening and fun, and a little bit different to what I'm used to when I talk technical things. So this is a good change. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. And if anybody wants to come see a show, just type in the Murder Mystery Company into Google and you'll find us.
Perfect.